So, hold the line, community and gamers. We are here with Hugh Jeremy from Unknown Worlds. Why don't we give an introduction for what you do, Hugh?
G'day everyone. Matt, thanks for having me. What does Unknown Worlds do? We create multiplayer games. We've got one game, Natural Selection 2, and we've got some other smaller projects, such as we've got our very own engine called Spark, and we've got an older game called Zen of Sudoku, which we use to help fund Natural Selection 2, amongst other things. And we're a small indie developer. We've got 9 people in San Francisco and a total of about 19 people, mixture of part-time and full-timers all over the world. So we're a total of 19 people.
Um, Natural Selection was originally a mod for the Half-Life source engine. How was the transition from going from a mod to a full-blown game like Natural Selection 2?
Going from mod to full-blown game is terrifying and difficult and awesome at the same time. It's definitely not something that developers should. It's not a decision that should be taken lightly, and there's a very good reason. A lot of people use existing engines because creating engines is difficult. And how was it? I mean, it basically means you need more money, you need more time, and you need more skills to make it happen. So with our engine called Spark for Natural Selection 2, obviously when we started Natural Selection 2, the obvious thing to do was go for the source engine because Natural Selection was a gold source mod, so the Half-Life engine gold source. And then came time where Charlie and Max, Charlie Cleveland, who is the CEO of Unknown Worlds, and Max, who's the technical director, and they're both the co-founders of Unknown Worlds, wanted to do a sequel. They thought it could roll, so they talked to Valve about the source engine, and that was the logical thing to do. But for various reasons, we chose to instead go for our very own engine, and we're really happy we did.
You guys employ some people from that made Titan's Quest, if I am correct on that. How is
Yeah,
that? How is that adjustment for going from one genre like an RPG to an FPS, third-person RTS hybrid type game for those people?
well, I mean, everyone really has come from somewhere making all sorts of different games. We've got people who've made racing games, people that have made, as you said, RPGs, people who've made, I mean, there's so many different types of games. Some people come from little tiny mobile games. So I think it's not, the genre perhaps wasn't so important. I mean, not everyone that comes in was, directly responsible for game design, although given our small team, we all contribute to all areas. What's important with people is their passion and their ability to adapt to new technology and apply their skills in creative and proactive ways. So people that have worked on RPGs or any other type of genre, I guess they just come to the game and this is the game they're making and they're passionate for it. So it didn't really matter that it was a different genre.
We have a mandatory creative question, so this ought to be interesting. Do
Go for
do
it.
you play test your games among the team? There have been many rumors, shall we say, at the dawn of the FPS genre that deadline after deadline would be missed, or because developers were too busy playing their own games.
Well, yeah, absolutely. We play Natural Selection 2 in the office almost, I mean, really every day here because we have daily play tests and we have volunteer community play. We have no QA department at Unknown Worlds. We have no departments at all. We have no PR department, although supposedly I'm supposed to handle some whatever PR stuff we actually do. We have no QA, so we have no quality assurance. We have no marketing and all that. We have no accounting, no administrative stuff. So without quality assurance, that's community members, people that love the game, playing in internal builds with us, and anyone can become one. There's application process and whatever, and we play in those with the community. So we'll have on any given day maybe 15 play testers who'll play games, and we in the office will join in the game as well. So that usually, I mean, most people in the office will be playing the game for a significant amount of time each day, and it's a lot of fun. Of course, it's also it can be difficult because you're trying to debug the game and make the game better, and you're playing it every day and you can see what's going wrong every day. But it's also good because if you don't play your own game, you don't know what's going into it, you don't know what the public is seeing, and that can be bad.
How does the creative process work within your team, such as like adding, feature X, and how does that process get determined?
It's actually, Matt, it's perfect you asked me that question right now, because right now we're having a thing called the Unknown Worlds Mod Jam, which is for a week. We're going to make all sorts of different little games, and that means we have to decide what games we're going to make. in this week. And so right now, behind in another room, well, we've got two rooms. So in the other room, everyone's around, sitting around our table, talking about what and arguing for what games and features they think we should make. And it's the same with natural selection too. We'll sort of just naturally coalesce into thinking, okay, it's about a new feature. What's it going to be? And we'll all argue for and against. For most of Natural Selection 2's development, Charlie was the head game design guy, sort of just naturally. It was his baby. He was going to do the game design, but it was always a very collaborative process where everyone, programmers, artists, animators, anyone was contributing to design of the game and what features and how they should work go into it.
This is more. This is probably more of an opinion question, but there was a lead up in a comparison between the multiplayer for a AAA game that recently came out and Natural Selection 2 with the alien versus marine motif of both games.
Yeah.
How do you feel in being compared to I hate using the term AAA project, but AAA in the budget sense?
It can be really terrifying. And I mean, let's not dance around it. You're obviously talking about Aliens, Colonial Marines. And really, I mean, we were terrified of Aliens, Colonial Marines as a developer. We had many meetings sitting around the table going, maybe we should move our release date. We don't want to be anywhere near this behemoth. The reviewers are just going to trash us because they're going to say that, look, this Aliens game is nothing compared to Aliens, Colonial Marines. Look how good an Aliens game can be. We were terrified. We went to game shows. They had they had the power loader, they had alien models, they had bunkers you could go into, and we just had wooden booths, quite literally, that we'd built on the show floor. So it was terrifying. But really, at the same time, we were all really excited for Aliens, Colonial Marines. We're all huge Aliens fans here in the office, and Charlie, game director, co-founder, CEO, has watched Aliens about 600 times. It was his main inspiration for making Natural Selection way back in 1999. So the overriding feeling now is after Aliens, Colonial Marines, for whatever reason, didn't quite come together as everyone wanted to, is sadness, because we wanted to go and visit LV426. We wanted to explore the Silico. I mean, all of that stuff. We're fans and we wanted to play it. So I mean, the biggest overriding feeling we have towards that is sadness and also empathy for fellow developers, because people that worked on that game would have put their hearts and souls into it, and artists and programmers would have worked damn hard to get that product, use their skills to the best of their ability to make that product good. And for whatever reason, something wasn't pulling that product together. And it's sad for everyone. I mean, we've lost an Aliens, Colonial Marines game, and it would be selfish of us to say, oh, well, lucky it wasn't amazing because we didn't get pasted by reviewers, because maybe the reviewers wouldn't have pasted us. Maybe we should just have the guts to say, hey, we'll stand on our own 2 feet no matter what other games are around. But yeah, I mean, it's game development sometimes doesn't go all the way to plan, and we don't feel good that Aliens, Colonial Marines didn't turn out as well as it could have.
There's a popular notion that the AAA segment is collapsing under its perhaps own weight, from big budgets not recouping the cost within the actual when the game is sold at market. Would you agree with that?
Well, it's a tricky question. I mean, most publicly traded games companies won't break down their financial results by individual games. So anyone that says, oh, this game's not recuperating its budget or whatever, this game's a failure, unless they've got insider information, they can't really know. And so all of that needs to be taken with quite a few grains of salt. There does seem to be a tendency for a lot of large developers to start chasing movie-style production, so putting big budgets into a big movie experience sort of thing, where the game is a set piece that you move through, and it's a cinematic experience. And there are a lot of games out there that are doing very well with that. There's no doubt, say, that Battlefield 4 will sell a lot of copies. Call of Duty is selling a lot of copies from doing that single-player thing. And it's one way of doing things. The game industry as a whole is doing fantastically well. I mean, yes, game studios fail, and some of those are big AAA studios, but overall, the industry is growing at a breakneck pace, and studios that fail, that's creative destruction. Something was going wrong there, and that, the people, all the talent and the capital that was tied up in those developments can now be redistributed to better run developments. So it seems a bit rash to say that AAA development is collapsing under its own weight. There are going to be big budget titles every year that are going to continue making bucket loads of money, and well done to them. And there's going to be titles that don't, and there's movies that come that don't. But from our perspective, we're feeling okay because we're not going to go down that route of cinematic big budget. We can't obviously, but we're not going to go down that cinematic scripted route. We're going to treat gaming as a thing, as more not a sandbox, but an experience you walk into and then you change for yourself, because that's the great thing about gaming. It's interactive. So Natural Selection 2 is this big box of chocolate that you can go into and experience in all sorts of different ways. And our next game, if whenever that might be, will be along that route. It won't be some sort of single player cinematic thing that you sort of play once and tell all your friends about how awesome it was. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just one way of going.
In the last year or so, there's been a flurry of activity boosting the media and recognition of indie developers from Kickstarters that are raising millions of dollars, like Project Eternity, Ouya, pick your project. Sony has been openly, essentially headhunting for the PlayStation 4. Have they potentially looked at Have they looked at you guys in any particular way in that regard?
Well, usually if a publisher was to approach like that, there'd probably be clauses in contracts and non-disclosure agreements that would say that you couldn't talk about it. And so that's all I'll say there. But you're touching on a really interesting subject, which is there's been this explosion of interest in indie and suddenly everybody's indie, and suddenly you've got indie titles winning awards that were funded by Microsoft, and all this kind of thing, which is. It does seem a little weird. I mean, Unknown Worlds, perhaps, depending on whatever funding arrangements and whatever arrangements we arrange for ourselves over the next few years, who knows what they'll be. Maybe we won't be indie in a sort of really strict sense in 2 years. Maybe we'll be big enough that people won't consider us that. But it's kind of an odd time because, I mean, to be independent, what you're saying is that you are financially, operationally, and creatively independent of any third party in your game developments. And as soon as you as soon as you sign a contract with a publisher that says you will meet these milestones, you will get these funding tranches, and you'll get this payment at the end, it's open to debate whether you are still indie because, in that contract, there'll be financial, operational, and creative constraints on you as a company and very severe penalties for breaking them. So, yeah, it's cool, though, that what is happening is that the publishers are starting to look outside their own, sort of their traditional garden of, okay, we work with these 5 developers, and we contract them on a regular basis to make games. Hey, maybe, there's this wide, beautiful field out there of all sorts of other developers, and you never know. Maybe in 2 years, Unknown Worlds, it does do a deal like that. We wouldn't, we're not saying it's a bad thing. It's just interesting that if we did that, we would not call ourselves indie at that point, at least during that development, because that wouldn't be an independent development. It would be a publisher development. I mean, once there's a publisher involved publishing you, it's very hard to say you're indie.
Speaking of natural selection in consoles, can we see a Natural Selection 2 console edition? Yay or nay?
It would be really hard for us. We'd love to. Right now, we're working very actively on getting the game to Mac and Linux, so we're very open to other platforms. We're not PC master race developers. We just love developing for the PC because it is so open. We can do what we like. We can push boundaries the way we like. It's just an objective fact that consoles are very limited environments. I mean, you saw the PlayStation 4's specifications. Sure, that's great, and it's going to advance console gaming, but a game, you're still working within a very, very limited subset of hardware in terms of graphical and computational power. For us, with Natural Selection 2, we push especially CPUs to the limit with our game. We have a huge amount of game logic. It's a very complex game logic environment written in a high-level scripting language called Lua, which means that doing that on a console would be very difficult. We also have, we're obviously not a AAA game, but we like to think our graphics are quite nice, and that involves things like ambient occlusion and other things that consoles often can't handle at the moment. And it'll be interesting to see just how much, the new generation can handle. So. And there's obviously the licensing aspects. If we have to pay to patch the game, we've patched the game 18 times since launch. And if we were paying X per patch, we would just not be able, we would go out of business. So a console doesn't really fit our development model. It doesn't really fit our philosophy, and it doesn't really fit our tech in terms of the Spark engine and how it runs and the limits it pushes in terms of computation. So we would love to put Natural Selection on an Xbox or a PlayStation 4 or whatever, but we just probably can't, which is sad because we would love to bring that experience to console gamers. There's no reason, we don't have any kind of objection to that. We don't think PCs are the best, somehow PC gamers are different or better or something. It's just that this is the platform that allows us to creatively express ourselves in the most effective way.
And I want to, as a Linux user, I want to say thank you if you are for trying your efforts to porting that over. Just
We definitely are at the moment. And look, but I will caveat it though, because we're working on it very actively, getting the game to run on Linux. But we obviously have to see continued sales of Natural Selection 2 to fund that. And they are continuing at the moment, so we're happily continuing to support Natural Selection 2 and get it over to other platforms. But if the stark business reality hits where we go, oh shit, we need to put out a new game to stay afloat as a company, we might have to sort of put Natural Selection 2 on Linux to bed. But it is being actively worked on at the moment, and we're definitely talking medium term. We're not aiming for sort of 2015 with Linux Natural Selection 2. We're aiming for a lot closer than that.
So finally, a question that you've probably been asked a dozen times: what's next for Unknown Worlds? What are future plans you are harboring that you could share?
Well, it's a really exciting time for us, and we can really share a lot because it's just a time of sort of creative exploration here at Unknown Worlds. A few people in the office and outside the office have cool ideas for games, and there's this internal sort of debate going on where everyone's selling ideas to each other and trying to convince people of ideas. In the medium term and the short term, it's all about supporting Natural Selection 2 and making it better. We have very defined plans for future content for Natural Selection 2, making it better and getting it to Mac and Linux and all that. They're very set goals. But after that, at some point we have, obviously as a company, we have to say, okay, we've supported Natural Selection 2 full-time for over a year. By that time, we will have put out, 30 patches or something. And it might be, time as a company to say, okay, let's slow down on Natural Selection 2. Let's maybe lengthen out this patch cycle on this game as it's quite mature now. And it's sold the copies it's going to sell, and look at new exciting possibilities. And that could be a totally new intellectual property IP. It might, who knows what it could be. We're really excited by the idea of doing something a little bit smaller than Natural Selection 2. So Natural Selection 2 had a lot of production values that, we're trying to be AAA, but on a tiny budget. So the maps are very sort of AAA, huge quantities of environment art go into those. They are the most expensive part of the development by far. And the graphics, obviously, trying to stand up to the big guys. And we're excited by the possibility of maybe doing a shorter development on something a little bit more simple in the production values department, but rich in gameplay. And that could involve anything. And just like we did with Natural Selection 2, the intention is to make it very, very open. So once there is something that we think could work, we're going to be very much opening it up to our community, allowing very early access to it while it barely works. It's definitely not a case that, in mid-2014 you're going to be wondering what is coming out of Unknown Worlds. It's more going to be a case of you'll have the opportunity to participate in building it. Just like in Natural Selection 2, people were submitting code and maps and ideas and balance and game changes. We hope that the next development will be very much like that, in that everyone who is interested will be able to see and play and change this game from like week 2, after we've laid the very basic groundwork for it. People will be able to come in and participate in a very, very real way. And we, again, coming back to your first question about Spark, and this is one of the great things about working with our own engine. It's one of the capabilities, and we're just excited about sharing it with everyone as soon as we can and having everyone be involved in it. It's going to be really exciting, whatever the hell it is.
Thank you, Hugh. Much appreciated for the time.
Thank you, Matt, for taking an interest in Natural Selection 2 and Unknown Worlds. We really appreciate it.
So there you go, Hold the Line community and gamers, the interview with Hugh from Unknown Worlds, and be on the lookout for some stuff coming down the pipeline from them. So